Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Paul Tripoli. Coach Tripp to my players, who I spent 20 years coaching high school and youth football here in Pensacola. Got a special guest today, Dr. Judy Bense. Dr. Bense, it's so great to see you.
It's my pleasure to be here, Paul. Thanks for asking me. I love your pennant in the background.
Yes, I do have a green screen, but yeah, it's what a beautiful time of the year. October is like, October, November is kind of like my favorite football. We'll get in and talk a little bit about football, but folks, here on Coach's Corner, we try to inspire and educate the mind to think, the heart to feel, and the body to act. That's right, Dr. Judy Bense, UWF President from 2008 to 2016. Dr. Bense was not only the first women president of the college, she was also the first anthropologist to become president of a public university in the United States.
That's true.
So, Dr. Bense, we're going to start at the beginning, because I believe the apple doesn't.
Not the beginning.
Yeah, right at the beginning. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You were born in New Jersey, but you grew up in Panama City. Talk a little bit about your mom and dad and your two brothers.
Well, my dad was a dairy farmer, and he and my mother both grew up in northern New Jersey, actually north central New Jersey, in Morris County, and their New Jersey land has always been expensive. And people who own the land and the farms usually are absentee owners, and they hire farmers. And so my dad went to Alfred College in New York and in animal husbandry. And he began, after he graduated, he began to be hired by farm owners who needed someone to run their dairy farm. Right. And he kind of moved around from farm to farm for a little while. He met my mom and they got married. Still did the same thing. And in Lafayette, New Jersey, which is north central New Jersey, the farmer next door was a Dutch immigrant by the name of Frank Bilsma. And my parents and the Bilsmas got to be very good friends, and they were both leasing. And, leasing a farm doesn't have a good future. So they wanted to know where they could find farms to buy. And Dad had a sponsor, and I think Frank just had some money. And so they took this road trip, and somehow they wound up in Bay County, Florida, where there were 2 farms for sale with herds and houses and a milk route, and it was kind of a turnkey. So they bought the farms, packed up their young families, and moved to Bay County, Florida. I was 6. My brother was 2, and my youngest brother hadn't been born yet. And so they started doing just what they wanted to do, which was milk cows, have a milk route, and run a dairy. Yeah. And so that's how we got there. And we were the only 4 people from New Jersey in the entire county, I'm sure.
What a story to go there. What a culture change. What a culture.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my mother never got over it. Never got over it.
Oh, is that right? Oh, my gosh.
No.
My mom grew up on a dairy farm. And
really?
Yeah, and I almost went to in upstate New York, and I almost went to Alfred University.
Alfred. That's where my dad went.
That was my second choice at college, Dr. Bense.
I'll be darned.
After Alabama, I guess I made the right decision, but.
Well, you never know. You just don't. And my dad had a godfather. His biological family, which is a wonderful family, just didn't have any money. But he had a godfather that sponsored him as a young man.
Right. Oh, what a great story. All right. So is it true that when you were just 8 there, moving only a couple years in Panama City, that you knew you wanted to be an archaeologist?
Well, that's a funny question, Paul. It's a funny thing. Yes, the answer is yes. My father was an only child, and so his parents followed him down to Bay County, and his aunts moved down with him, lived with. They were sisters, and so the 2 sisters lived together. One was married, Frances. The other, Elsa, was not married and was a professional woman in New York as a legal secretary, and really supported the family in many ways.
Right.
And so she gave me a subscription to National Geographic in 1957. I must have been 12.
Oh, wow.
And I began to read them. And I was always a big reader. My parents read to me. I read a lot. I was always curious. I read biographies and all kinds of things. And I kind of read the libraries out. I went to a little country school, Highland Park Elementary, which is still alive and well. And anyway, I began to be curious about the past. And as I look back at it, I think what I began to learn from National Geographic and reading history books is that the past is knowable, even though everybody's dead. And that when you're a teenager, 12, 13, 14, is a curious concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody else could do it, I could do it. We had a little, you probably had it too in grammar school, a publication called The Weekly Reader.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the news and science, mainly science and history. And then they began to develop radiocarbon dating. Dr. Leakey found our earliest human ancestors at the time in Africa. And I thought, wow. And I just got more and more interested in it. And my parents were, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
And
right.
so I decided at an early age I wanted to go to Egypt and dig up mummies. And I realized what I had to study in college and make sure I got in college. And then I realized that I wasn't going to Egypt and dig up mummies. To an Ivy League, you had to have money, and the jobs were scarce as hen's teeth. So I quickly learned the archaeology that I could make a living at, which is archaeology in the United States, which is fascinating and much harder than going to Europe, to Egypt. Yeah.
Wow. What a great story. Okay. So you fast forward to 1977, you began teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about FSU. And we'll talk football, but in a little while, because the foresight that you had is amazing. So we'll talk about that. But I want to finish 1977. You began teaching anthropology and archaeology at UWF. And then in 1980, you established an anthropology program. Later, you started underwater archaeology program. Talk about these programs and some of your challenging obstacles that you had to overcome, and maybe the greatest discoveries that you had found.
Well, I got my PhD in 1972 when I was 27. And that's pretty young. And I've always kind of been on a fast track. I'm that way. Maybe I'm ADD. I don't know.
Yeah.
But both my parents dropped dead. They dropped dead in their middle 40s.
Oh my God.
They did. And I was the oldest, and I was 2 months away from graduating with my PhD. My brother at the time was an undergraduate in music at Florida State. So when I got my degree in 72, the younger brother was in junior high. Somebody had to go home and take care of the family. And so I could not practice from 72 until the old folks passed away. The boys, my brothers, were out of college. And so in 77, I could return or began in archaeology. And in Panama City, University of West Florida had an extension center, like we have one in Fort Walton. We used to have one in Panama City. And so I walked in there and said, well, I've got a PhD in archaeology and anthropology, and I'd like to know if there's a way that I could sort of start my career and teach. And they said, you have a what? They said, of course you can teach here. So I started in high school. And I got my library and I reread my library and anyway, so in Panama City at UWF, I began to have my first experiences with teaching and doing research. Of course, I had a field school, and it was night school with a bunch of Navy chiefs who were retired and drinking beer at break, and they were okay,
Yeah.
And so I got back into the professional organizations, and I realized that there was a new dimension in archaeology called cultural resource management. While I was home tending the family, there passed some laws and regulations, which most people are familiar with, for environmental impact statements, cultural resources as well as natural resources before any federal project.
Mhm.
And that caused a big boom in archaeology and compliance with regulations for people that were building bridges and building waterways and building roads. And they needed people with PhDs that were with universities at the time and had large scale excavation experience. Well, I had all of those. And so I immediately started getting calls from friends of friends who were in the system. And that led to the biggest and largest archaeological contract in the eastern United States on something called the Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. But it was right down my alley. It's what I had learned to do. It was in my time period, which is about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. But I had to go to the University of Alabama to do it. I said, okay. So I went to the University of Alabama and worked that project through them, which was just huge for them. The first project was about $500,000. And let's just say that there are a lot of things about major research organizations and universities that I don't like.
Right.
I don't like the culture. It's kind of dog eat dog, and students really don't count. And it's just rough.
Kind of selfish and arrogant.
It is.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it.
Right.
I didn't like the culture.
Right.
And so I finished that contract and I thought, man, I don't want to do archaeology for money, only money, because that doesn't interest me. Archaeology interests me.
Right.
I don't like being at a major university. So I thought, go to where you know there is good archaeology at a place that never heard of it, and just build a program, try to start one. And so I walked into the University of West Florida. I knocked on the door and said, I've got this big contract coming up and I'd like to run it through the University of West Florida, and it's $2 million. What? That started it all. So I am a walk-on to the University of West Florida. And I laid my cards out on the table. I wanted to start a department of anthropology. I wanted to have an archaeological research unit. And I was going to be gone for 2 or 3 years to Northeast Mississippi running a huge project. And they said, sure. They gave me everything I wanted. And I had a sponsor by the name of Dallas Blanchard, the chair of sociology. And I asked him, I said, Dallas, why are they giving me everything I'm asking for? He says, because they don't believe you. I said, really? He said, no, they don't believe you. They think it's just hot air.
Oh my goodness. Holy
really?
Cow, Dr. Bense.
Yeah. And he said, you be sure to staple all the things they said they were going to do for you. Start a program, hire faculty in anthropology, give you a curation, yada, yada, yada.
Wow.
Because if you get, I said, I'm a sole source. They said, they still don't believe you. So that's how I started at UWF.
Oh my gosh. All right. So you started it, you get the program going, you start hiring instructors. How many classes did they teach? And what was the archaeology 101 that you had to start out with? Because you couldn't start out with archaeology 404. How did you set the curriculum, and where did you get help doing that?
Well, I didn't have much help. I set the curriculum. They wound up hiring one anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist who studies living people. And so we designed a traditional program, mainstream program, basic studies plus anthropology and social science electives. Then we were just 2 years. We were at the time a 2-year institution, just junior and senior. And so we started with anthropology 101. Then you take archaeology, and there's a whole sequence of courses. And they said, okay. So I wound up teaching half of the curriculum, writing all the proposals, doing all the work. And of course, I know even $2 million runs out. And it did. And so I had to look for another way to fund the program and to fund archaeology, because it's very expensive. And that's when we did the Hawkshaw project with Gulf Power. And that was the main rainmaker that I had there in 83 and 4. I developed public archaeology. I was able to work with the media, having school teaching kits, lots of public documents spinning off of it. It won a national award for archaeology, the first one ever. Gulf Power won the award. I won the award, and that really set me going.
Wow, that set you going on your journey to other discoveries. What was the most challenging discovery? What was something that like really like seemed like always went wrong, but you learned a lesson from?
Well, the Gulf Power site project was a 2,000-year-old Indian village and a 100-year-old African-American neighborhood. Everything went right. Nothing went wrong. It was just one of those, what do they call them? Peak performances, those peak times where everything went right.
Right.
I haven't really had anything that went wrong all the time, but on every project, things go wrong.
Right.
You have to learn how to deal with them. It's kind of like life.
Right.
And but the interesting thing about it is that there had never been a professional archaeologist in Pensacola, and Pensacola is rich in heritage. It's rich in archaeological sites, and I knew that, but I didn't know. I had students who helped me do the research, but I kind of stumbled into historic archaeology downtown, and then I realized that the niche, if you will, in professional archaeology, everybody was doing pre-Columbian or Indian archaeology. Nobody was doing, nor did they want to do, post-Columbus from 1492 and here 1500 to the present day. They thought it just wasn't the thing to do, but it was an empty niche. People in Pensacola knew about their history. And so I basically partnered with the historians and rode with on their coattails and made great discoveries downtown. Even I didn't think there would be that much preserved under the streets, under the parking lots. For God's sakes, give me a break. It was perfect.
Wow.
And so that really pushed me in the profession and in the university into a very, I don't want to say powerful, but in a very good position. It was public, it was friendly. I began to learn that the administrators at the university needed a white hat. They wanted the limelight, and I could give it to them. So, and then there were the shipwrecks. I mean, for God's sakes, who would think of shipwrecks? And at the time, in 1982, when we discovered, maybe it was 3, the first shipwreck off Gulf Breeze, the state had hired an underwater archaeologist with a real PhD, and we began on that journey. Now, underwater archaeologists in the early 80s were treasure hunters. The guys who did it were cowboys. They had a bad reputation, and I had to be very careful not to get sucked into them, even accidentally.
Wow.
So I did, and it doubled our program. It tripled our funding. The shipwrecks, and then they found Luna in '92. Good Lord.
Oh, the shipwrecks. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the shipwrecks, because that was, I remember that. I moved here in 1991, and that struck me early when I was here about, the earliest settlement in the lower United States in 1559. But yeah, talk about those ship discoveries, because that must have been so exciting.
Well, of course it was. And Roger Smith, the former state underwater archaeologist, happened to be a 16th century ship expert. He just happened to. And and had been working in the Caribbean on his own research, looking for Columbus's ships and other 16th century shipwrecks. Right. And so I said, he wanted to look for Luna ships. I said, Roger, don't try to find them. You didn't find Columbus's ships. Don't look for something that you're not going to find. It'll hurt your reputation and ours. Well, he drank half the scotch I ever had and didn't listen a bit. And son of a gun if he didn't find it on his first try. So you can see, Paul, the story of archaeology and my career and the university's public face, it really has been one of good luck, of taking advantage of opportunities, of taking a moderate risk, going into historical archaeology, which I knew nothing about, going into shipwreck archaeology, which could have been professionally dangerous.
Right.
But the resources were so good that the way we handled it was so professional that it turned out to be just right and began to be a stellar program at the University of West Florida. So I know. And
Dr. Bense, man, we're so proud of you, man, for doing that. I mean, what a great, I mean, you lived a great life. You're following your passion.
I really have, Paul, and I'm very blessed, although it was hard work and risky.
Right.
I mean, becoming president, I mean, who ever thought someone would ask me to be president of the university? And, I mean, when they asked me, I thought it was a joke. And I said, well, of course not. I'm involved in work in Mexico, following the people who came. I mean, no, this is cutting edge research. And I said, I'm doing exactly what I want. I'm at the peak of my career. Why would you ask?
Well,
and President Kavanaugh had left quickly. He kind of cut and run. He got a better job offer after he got a big raise here.
Right.
He used that to parlay that into a big, high-paying job in Pennsylvania. And the board was, and the community were miffed. And they wanted somebody they could trust and that they knew. And I said, no, thank you very much. I'm very honored, but no. And about the fourth time they asked, they ganged up on me, meaning the administration. And I said, all right, I'll throw my hat in the ring. Ed Rinelli will get it. All right. And they were quiet. Right. And then comes time and they vote for me. And I'm thinking, what? I said, all right. I'll do it for 9 months. That's it. You do the search for the president. I'll keep the university between the ditches. Okay. Right. I'll put some of my projects on hold. They can stand 9 months. I'll call the people I'm responsible to and tell them this is extenuating circumstances.
Oh, that's right, because you're interim president first, right, Dr.
Bense? Right. That's all I was going to be, was the interim.
Okay.
So anyway, so there I am, and they don't do a search. The board of trustees. And I said, wait a minute. Now you got to do the search. You have to have it advertised by Christmas. You interview in the winter, and you set it up for the person, whoever wins it, to show up. You decide by the end of the spring semester. They said, well, would you serve another year? I said, all right. And they still didn't do a search. And I said, when are you going to do a search? By that time, I'd gotten some projects going, and they liked it. The advertising project, the dorm building project, the media blitz.
Right.
So finally, they said, in your interim contract, it says that you cannot apply for the presidency. I said, right. They said, but we found out that we can appoint you. I said, well, would you do it? Well, that was the big decision. Right. Do I leave archaeology for a long time and let these projects, all of them, go?
Oh, gosh.
And I knew what being president was going to be like. No life, scheduled to death.
Right.
Completely, you travel half the time.
Right.
But opportunity only knocks once.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm glad you said, hey, all the football players that ever played, all the teachers, all the professors, everybody, all the head of departments are thankful. Thankful you said yes. So let's talk football. Okay. I think you had foresight when I had Coach Bobby Bowden on my show. When he was doing his book tour right before you hired Coach Shinnick, he said that it's going to be a huge success. And I had friends, Dr. Bense, that were like naysayers, and I'm there were naysayers. Oh, talk about some of the naysayers, but I want you to talk about, was it your love at FSU and you saw the university community come together over football? What spurred you to take that risk and jump into that territory? Because it just amazes me how the courage that you have and the stuff you had to go through.
Well, when I was at FSU between 63 and 69, we had Coach Pete. Oh, what was his name? I forget his last name. We had a coach that was moderately well known. We were in bleachers, and we had a great time. We weren't necessarily winners. I think we won against Florida for the first time in that time period. But then, as an alum, as FSU began on its track to greatness and being a Division I contender and growing, I saw in the early while I was president, I saw and knew why FSU had grown. It was football. That was the big thing that gave them attention. They were winners. Bobby Bowden was the coach. He was beating everybody or trying to, and it galvanized and grew that university.
Right.
It wasn't their academic prowess. They're great academics, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't them. It wasn't the arts. It wasn't science that really pushed them over the top. It was football. And I realized that football, not having that, I realized that one of the steps and requirements of real academic and university growth includes football. And like, why wouldn't we have it? Look at all the football we have. Look at we're only Division II university in the entire state. None of them had football.
Right.
And I thought, that's a recruiting advantage.
Wow.
Wow. So I also knew that there are very few things really that a president can do at a university. You have to have your strategic plans. You have to have, vice presidents implementing everything. And that's the way it works. And it's fine. But every once in a while, there's something a president can do as a personal initiative. And so I was having a hard time about 2011, 2012, the roller coaster of, you do it right, you do it wrong. And I thought, I need something fun to work on. I need something fun that will be really good for the university and that I like.
Right.
And so I had a little talk with the athletic director, the interim athletic director at the time, Dave Scott. And he said, yeah. So I began decided to hold a pep rally, and it was where I lifted the helmet up in the pep rally.
Yeah, I remember that.
Music was playing, and so But anyway, so I knew it was a good idea. Nobody had to convince me.
You wouldn't listen to the naysayers.
No, I didn't listen.
No.
And the way I described the way Dave Scott, the athletic director, and I did football is that he did the work and I kept the wolves away. I kept the door closed. I didn't let anybody distract me.
You kept the bad cancer out of the way.
I did.
Let's give some flowers to Dave Scott, man. What a tremendous.
Oh, absolutely. He did the work.
Oh my gosh, what a great athletic.
He's really good. So anyway, I began to go to the civic clubs and talk about it, and nobody said anything bad. Nobody did.
Right.
The faculty grumble, but the faculty grumble about lots of things. And we had to prove to the faculty that we weren't using money for football that we could have used, that they could have used. We could have used for supplies, raises, or bonuses. So you had to be careful about the money. And I thought, well, I'll get it at the legislature because they've supported every other football university that started football by raising their athletic fee, which gives them a boost. And cash to do it.
Yeah.
For 3 years, I got not no, but hell no. And I thought, wow, they're not going to give us a damn nickel.
Wow.
The legislature.
Wow.
So I held a town hall and I said, look, we're not going to get the money. We just came out of a recession and nobody's going to give us the money.
Right.
So we're going to do it the way we've done everything else in Northwest Florida. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to save up our money, and we're going to do it ourselves. We may start out on a grass field, on the intramural field with rented bleachers and a sound system. But that's how we're going to start.
Darn right.
And I said, I have to wait we got money. We got to build a field. I got enough to build a field, but I don't have enough for anything else. So we got trailers. We're going to get them in for offices and what do you call it? Locker rooms.
Right.
So we just kept building it. We just kept getting this, and Dave got that. And, we got enough money to do the field. We did the field. So the point is that by the time we were ready, which was 2016, actually it was 2014, I knew we would be ready to play.
Right.
Even if we were in trailers, even if we were in temporary quarters. Right. And then to deal with the Bayfront the Blue Wahoos field, the stadium came up.
Right.
So I parlayed that, and I beat down City Hall, and on the commission that made it hard, and we finally were going to play there. And so then, make a long story short, in comes Pete Shinnick. He was a great first coach, and the team comes and we start to play, and everybody loved it. We had alumni coming in from everywhere that never showed up. Fundraising went through the roof. Wow. And for several years, even to this day, VIPs in town would come up to me and say, "Judy, I am so sorry." I said, "Well, what are you sorry about?" They said, "We thought you were just blowing smoke. It was a PR stunt."
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." Wow. And they would give me a check for football.
Whoa, yeah, that a girl, that a way to show. Right.
And the person who still says that to this day is Eric Nicholson, a very important, wealthy person in town who has been a Maine football founder. Right. And giving significant money. Sandy Sansing was another one. They were, nah. So it just turns out that the naysayers, the faculty didn't like it. They didn't raise a stink. They just said it's going to be terrible, blah, blah, blah. But the faculty said, these football players, they have to attend class. And the coaches make sure they're in class, and they have to go to study hall.
Right.
They're good students. And we're not bringing in thugs. We're bringing in nice young men. And Pete and the coaches make sure that they, obey the rules and are good people.
Right.
So anyway,
Pete was instrumental. Let's talk about how did you hire Pete? I mean, how did that go? Because that was
I learned the hard way as a president.
That was a brilliant hire, Dr. Bense.
Yeah, well, Dave Scott found him.
Dave Scott found him. Wow.
And I learned a hard lesson. Don't interfere with the coach. Don't interfere with the selection team or committee for the coaches.
How'd you learn that? What did you learn about how to do that?
Well, I did once, and it was a bust.
Other way to be honest, Dr. Bense. I love you for that.
I'm so sorry. And I never do. So I didn't.
Yeah, right.
And so I said, "Dave, if you trust him," and I brought him in my office, and we talked for a good while, me, Dave, and Pete. And I asked him some questions. I said, "Are you sure you can play football without cussing?" And he said, "Yes, I allow no cursing." He was a deeply religious person, and he was an experienced person.
Right.
So I said, "Dave, I think you found a good one." All I did was agree with Dave.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so it's awesome. Dave. I didn't.
So you retired now, Dr. Bense. What are you doing with your time? Reading, traveling a little bit?
No. As you know, I'm really not a professional president. I was a local who could handle it well. But what I really am is an archaeologist.
Right.
It's what I do best. I have a knack for it. I'm lucky in it. And when you leave your profession for a risky job, half the presidents in the United States leave under a cloud.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It hurts their career. Their vice presidents get them in trouble. They act out. They get greedy.
Right.
And it's a very risky position.
Right.
And I told anybody who would listen, including myself, that, if I can exit the presidency without any problems, if I still have the energy and I still have the desire, I want to finish up what I should have been doing in those 9 years. I want to finish it up at the end.
Right,
so when the Board of Trustees asked me to serve another 5 years, I said, no, I won't. But what I will do is not ask you for a raise, and I will leave when the end of the first football season. They said, okay. So they gave me a nice what other presidents in the state of Florida are getting as retirement packages, their step down packages. Mm-hmm. And they gave me a nice contract for 3 years to write the book, the synthesis of the research I'd done. Because I started it and only I could finish it. So I have a nice office. They made me president emeritus, so I have rights and privileges.
Yeah.
And so I have been for the last 7 years. I retired in 21, but I stepped down in 17. So it's been 7 years. And I have written 2 books. I published 3 academic articles, and my list of what I have to do to finish my professional career on a very high note. That's what I can do. Yeah.
Way to go, Dr. Bense, man. I can't even finish one book. What's the name of it?
It's Presidios of Spanish West Florida.
Okay.
And it's from 1698 to 1763 in West Florida. The research I've been doing off and on for 30 years.
Wow.
So now.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I can't wait to read it, Dr. Bense.
So that's what I've been doing. And now I'm writing a book for you and all the other general public on early Spanish Florida, from Ponce de Leon all the way to the British takeover in 1763. Oh. I'm in the last stages of manuscript revision, and it's due at Christmas, and I'm ahead of schedule. It'll come out early 26.
Oh, awesome, Dr. Bense. So great to see you and talk to you. Oh my gosh, are you still watching football? Are you still?
Oh yeah,
How's your family? How's your brothers doing? How's the family doing?
The middle brother died in the late 80s, but my youngest brother Alan's doing fine.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like you're staying busy, so I don't think any grass grows under your feet still to this day.
I don't think so. I should probably put my feet up and travel the world, but this is important to me as a professional.
Right.
And I'm receiving now lifetime awards and achievement awards. And I had always hoped my career would wind up like that.
Oh, we're so proud of you, Dr. Bense. Love you to death, man.
Thank you.
We're so proud that we're lucky to have you, and hope I see you soon.
It's been my pleasure. It's really been fun, and I've been lucky, and things have turned out well.
Yeah, thank God for you and all you, and being a sports fan too. And,
go Argos! I mean, my goodness,
go Argos! Go Argos!
We scored 70 points last weekend, for heaven's sakes.
It's in good hands, that's for sure. All right, Dr. Bense, go make some great more discoveries. We'll talk soon.
Good, thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Judy Bense, one of a kind. What a lady she is. Sports fan, yeah. We didn't talk a whole lot about sports, but what an amazing anthropologist, archaeologist, president, person. Just all around joy, and an impressive lady. Hopefully to have her on again, but it was great to talk to her. Stay tuned for these messages here on Coach's Corner. Without these great sponsors, this just all wouldn't be possible. Talk to you soon, everybody. So long.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bay Minette, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
That's you trying to fix the plumbing yourself to save a few bucks. Doing things yourself doesn't always end well. The same goes for insurance. That's why Auto Owners works with local independent agents who tailor coverage to meet your needs and offer discounts for life, home, car, and business insurance. Because sometimes you need a professional to get the job done right. That's simple human sense.
75 years of service in high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple painted brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.